It is an election year for municipalities across BC. Civic politicians spending money to win your vote. Unlike provincial and federal elections, though, there are almost no rules around how much money candidates and political parties can spend. Something Integrity BC has been following closely. Dermot Travis joins us now. Dermot, I'm sure it's the big cities that have the most at stake. How much money are we talking about?
We're talking about a lot of money, and I think it's going to shock your viewers tonight. In 2008, all of the candidates and parties in Vancouver, just in the city of Vancouver, spent $4.5 million. Now, if they think that's bad, in 2011, they spent $5.3 million. And if you turn that around to a dollar sum for everyone who actually cast a ballot in the last election in Vancouver, it works out to $36.60 per vote.
That is a lot of money. How does that compare to other cities across the country?
Well, this is what's so remarkable, is Vancouver not only is an exception, it's out of the universe on this. In Calgary, they had their municipal elections in last fall. Naheed Nenshi, and they have no limit in Alberta for spending. They have limits on donations. He decided to put a self-imposed limit on himself. And the limit was going to be 65 cents per eligible voter. And he spent $391,000. And that's in a city with 250,000 more voters than the city of Vancouver. In Mississauga, Ontario, the candidate running for mayor has a limit of spending no more than $320,000. So really, Vancouver's in the stratosphere on this one.
Why aren't there campaign finance rules in BC? The cities exist at the purview of the provincial government.
Well, this is what's so astounding about it, is that in 2010, Premier Campbell appointed a local government task force to look at how elections were going to be run in British Columbia at the local level. And that task force actually came out and called for spending limits, at least in municipal elections. They didn't call for donation caps, but they did call for spending limits. And Bill Bennett, who was the minister at the time, he said, yes, we'll have it in place for 2011. Then Ida Chong became the minister, and she said, yes, we'll have it in place for 2011. Then it was 2014, and now the government's saying, well, next time, we'll have it in place for 2017. They just don't seem to want to put spending limits in place, and they definitely don't want to put donation caps in place.
And they exist elsewhere, the spending limits.
They do. This is what's, excuse me, so incredible about it. In Ontario, a candidate running for public office can't spend more than 85 cents per voter. You compare that to what we were just talking about in Vancouver. In Quebec, the limit's 35 cents per voter, some 38 cents for mayor, 30 cents for a councillor. And both provinces, as Alberta does, have caps on how much you can donate to a political party. And just for some juxtaposition here, Bob Rennie, who's often referred to as Vancouver's condo king, had a little luncheon for Vision Vancouver's mayor, Gregor Robertson, last Friday. It was $25,000 a plate. Now, in Ontario, you can't give more than $750 to a candidate. The only exception is Toronto and the post of mayor, where the cap there is $2,500. In Quebec, the maximum you can give to a candidate is $300, and in Alberta, it's $5,000.
You can see why developers would want access to municipal politicians. Cities are all about land use. Some of these donations, though, don't come from the city. They come from out of the city or out of the province even.
Well, that did not just out of the province, out of the country. In the last round of civic elections in Metro Vancouver, we saw companies based in the United States donating to local candidates running for office in Metro Vancouver. Some of the donations that Vision Vancouver and the NPA received in the last go-round came from outside of the province. In fact, in 2011, 161 different corporations gave more than $1,000 to Vision Vancouver. The largest was companies associated to Wall Financial that gave $280,000. The NPA had 176 companies at more than $1,000. And the largest, get ready for this, was Rob McDonald, who gave $960,000 to the NPA. And between Bob Rennie's lunch last week, which I believe set a record in Canada for a political fundraiser, lunch or dinner, and Rob McDonald, who I think has set a record for a municipal donation in Canada, the people who actually live in the city of Vancouver should be concerned about who their political parties and elected representatives actually listen to once they get elected.
It is interesting numbers. I want to quickly ask you about federal election reform. You have some concerns with the new Elections Act.
Well, I think Pierre Poilievre, the minister responsible for what's called the Fair Elections Act, has been ripping a page out of George Orwell's novels Animal Farm in 1984. There's nothing fair about the Fair Elections Act. And I think what both Prime Minister Harper and the minister have to take into account is that the opposition that is coming to the Fair Elections Act is not coming from just one side of the political spectrum. It's coming from across the political spectrum. It's coming from people in the Conservative Party, the Liberal Party, the NDP, and the Green Party. And I think when you have that much opposition to draft legislation and that much opposition to how you are doing it by using closer and other procedures at the parliamentary level to try to push this bill through, you need to take a pause and say, maybe on some of the sections, we've gotten this wrong. And when you have legislation that could potentially disenfranchise hundreds of thousands of Canadians across Canada, I think we all need to be concerned about what the agenda might be. And I think we have to go back to how parties have worked in the past when it comes to amending election legislation. And that is that they try to seek a consensus of all parties rather than simply use their majority to push through a bill that many people see as being simply a bill to favor one party.
Dermot, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. Election issues certainly top of mind here in British Columbia.
Thanks, Al.